was a period in which this country had its greatest growth, in which people streamed to it from all over the world and were able to make a better life for themselves and their children. If you take the automobile industry in particular, since Henry Ford really revolutionized it, it transformed the nature of life in this country. The automobiles improved tremendously. They came down in cost relative to other goods. The effect of the kind of regulations you now have has been to make automobiles not more safe, but less safe. Why? Because by making them more expensive, they make it pay to keep an old car on the road longer. The average age of cars on the road has gone up, and old cars are less safe than new cars. By making them more expensive, you've reduced the amount of foreign competition. We have a lot of foreign competition, but you probably know that there are many foreign-made cars that make no attempt to export to the United States because the cost of meeting all the particular regulations and standards make it uneconomical to do so.
Well, they certainly haven't discouraged enough to make Detroit happy.
Of course, but I don't want to make Detroit happy. That's not my aim. I want to make the citizen happy. I want to make the customer happy. Right. The last thing in the world we want to do is to make Detroit happy.
Let's just, if Chrysler folds, now we're left with two automobile companies, and
not at all. We're not.
And they'll have even more power, and they'll say, "Love it or leave it."
Nonsense.
Take it or
nonsense. If we don't have any tariffs on cars from abroad, if we have free trade, the automobile industry of the world is in competition with Chrysler. Do you think that it was really, and with General Motors and Ford, who offered the greater challenge to General Motors and Ford?
Toyota.
Toyota and Volkswagen. So where's this nonsense about there'll be only two car companies?
Yeah, but
I have no objection to there being 100 car companies if the market stands it. But I don't believe you ought to artificially prop up a third company in order to say we got three companies.
This is Milton Friedman, professor of economics, the Nobel Prize winner. And just let me step here just a moment. Let me try and see if I can't get somewhere in the next segment. Dr. Friedman is our guest, and we hope you'll join us. Let's just review for a second, because I don't want to bore you to death here, but this is really, I am fascinated by the dialogue, and just to characterize Dr. Friedman's position, which I should let him do.
You won't succeed in not doing it.
Just tell me how I'm doing here. Here is a man who feels that definitely there's too much government intervention in everything, and that if we just take Adam Smith's notion of the 19th century and let the laws of supply and demand work without all these bureaucratic rules and regulations that we would have, you think we can eliminate the gas shortage if we do that?
The only reason we have the gas shortage is because it's made in Washington. There's no need for the gas shortage. There's a problem in oil. Oil is expensive. The fact that the OPEC nations have formed an effective monopoly and quadrupled the price of oil hurts us. No question. We pay more. But we have multiplied the injury to ourselves by our bad government policies. Here's Japan we were talking about a moment ago. Japan, it's 100% dependent on foreign oil. It has no gas lines. Why? Because it hasn't tried to prevent prices from adjusting things. If the OPEC nations had been hiring our energy regulators as their agents,
they couldn't have done a better job.
They couldn't have done a better job, but they didn't have to. They got it for free.
Mm-hmm. Give me that speech about maximum minimum now. The way to create shortages is to create a maximum price which is below what the free market would have otherwise.
Absolutely.
All right, so that even though we're appalled at gasoline, which is more than $1 a gallon, your point is to get the government out of this game of regulation is to, you acknowledge, allow the gasoline to go higher.
Excuse me. It may make the price at the pump higher, but it'll make the cost to the consumer lower. Who do you suppose is paying the over $10 billion a year budget of the Department of Energy, which amounts to 9 cents a gallon for every gallon of gasoline we consume?
Yeah, I saw you. Can you prove that?
Of course.
9 cents a gallon for
Of course.
Are there 20,000 people in the Department of Energy?
Yes.
20,000
people. All of them making trouble. All of them paid. Let me give you a very simple example, because it's hard to go on. Here's Canada next door. Why is it there are no gas shortages in Canada, and the price of gasoline in Canada is lower than it is in the United States? Canada's in competition with the world, but it doesn't have the same kind of Department of Energy we did. If we had no price controls, you have to ask where you start. If right now the only thing you did was to eliminate the price controls, the price of gasoline at the pump would go up.
Right.
If simultaneously you also decontrolled crude oil and eliminated the regulation over the oil industry in this country, the price of oil would go down, because you would unleash the productive potential of the American oil industry. Explain to me why it makes sense to propose that we produce synthetic fuels at costs estimated up to $40 a barrel, while we will let people who pump oil out of the American land, oil well, some of them can only get less than $6 a barrel for their oil. Others can only get $14 a barrel, but we're going to spend the taxpayers' money to produce $40 a barrel oil. Is that sensible?
You're saying that they get that because of regulation? That's all they get because of regulation?
Yes, the regulation, the
Right.
limit on the price fixing, the limit on the price which they may receive for oil. Now, where do you suppose the difference between that price and the world price goes to?
Okay, let me just, how do you speak to this nightmare? Let's do your thing. You're a czar. We'll make you a czar, and you're going to say, look, the free enterprise system is going to work. I'm not crazy about the OPEC monopoly either, but this is the facts of life. It's the geography, and it's the way we got to play this game. And let's let it happen as it happens. $3 a gallon. Now, we have truckers shooting each other right now because of their frustration out of their inability to pay the...
Excuse me. The only reason they're shooting each other is because the government won't let them be free to set their prices. You have the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission, in turn fixes their prices. The Interstate Commerce Commission, in turn, decides who may and may not haul freight. Do you know that if you want to haul freight between certain places, you may have to buy the rights from a company that doesn't own any trucks? There are many people in this country who get income out of the accidental fact that they own ICC licenses to transport goods between point A and point B, which they don't use, but they rent out for others to use. The total cost, the total value of all of those rights, a purely artificial monopoly value that has no economic counterpart, is in the billions of dollars. So if you could simultaneously reduce the cost of trucking as well by simply abolishing the Interstate Commerce Commission.
You want to do that too?
Of course.
Now we've got all... But now, wouldn't the result be chaos with trucks coming from all different directions and obviously...
Obviously not.
No.
Why would the result be chaos? Trucks aren't going to come from all different directions and bump. Quite the opposite.
I don't mean bump. I mean in the sense that...
But I would say...
I'm moving into the... Aren't you troubled by multinationals and the size of companies? And that's not what Adam Smith meant. Adam Smith didn't mean for Exxon to have a 60 and 70% profit
If you had, first of all, of course I'm troubled by multinationals in the sense that I would rather have a world in which there were a larger number of small companies. The question at issue is not that. The question is, what are your alternatives and how do you promote such a world? One of the major reasons you have multinationals and large companies now is precisely because of the role which government plays. Here is Chrysler. Get back to it. The chairman of Chrysler is spending full time, has hired a whole group of lobbyists in Washington. He is engaging in a political campaign to get the government to bail him out. Now, is that a productive use of effort? If he weren't doing that, if he isn't bailed out, will the effect be that Chrysler will disappear? Not at all. Most bankrupt companies come back into operation with a new management and a clean financial slate and are more efficient. The fact that Chrysler goes bankrupt doesn't mean that his factories are going to go up in smoke. If they're worth using, they'll be bought by other people to be used.
Like GM?
And in fact, you'll have a strong... They might be.
Doesn't that bother you?
As compared with what? As compared to have the government own the factory and produce it?
You know, can Sears buy Kmart too in your
Of course.
You think so?
Sears has been one of the great protectors of the consumer all during its existence. As a matter of fact, you say, can Sears buy Kmart? The way Kmart has been growing, the question is going to be, can Kmart buy Sears?
Yeah. All right, but
that's an example. Now take that.
In other words, you really want the Justice Department out of this too, huh? I mean, you don't have any problem at all with a
the most effective antitrust measure you could take in this country would be complete free trade.
And the biggies will eat up the little ones?
That is not
We've
true.
already seen the demise of them.
Excuse me, that has never happened. There have been very careful studies made of what has happened to the concentration of industry in this country over the past 100 years. And except in those areas where government has stepped in, it is not true that the biggies have eaten up the smallies. In fact, it's often been the other way. And Kmart is a good example. It started from nothing. Sears was already a major conglomerate. And Sears has been losing ground and going downhill, and Kmart has been rising.
All right, just one question before